Hi Marta, how are you?
I am fine, thanks. How about you?
Pretty good, thank you.
If all is well, let's share the latest news.
We speak slowly and use simple words so that you, our dear friends, can easily understand what we are talking about.
More you listen to our podcast, more you understand. More you understand, more you learn English.
Let's start.
And our first news of the day is about COVID. Half of Europe to be infected with Omicron within weeks. And this news is from the WHO.
WHO stands for World Health Organization, is a United Nations agency. It is responsible for providing leadership on global health matters, setting norms and standards, providing technical support to countries, and monitoring and assessing health trends.
The World Health Organization has warned that half of Europe will have caught the Omicron COVID variant within the next 6 to 8 weeks. The projection was based on the 7 million new cases reported across Europe in the first week of 2022. The number of infections has more than doubled in a 2-week period. Recent studies suggest that Omicron is less likely to make people seriously ill than previous COVID variants. But Omicron is still highly contagious.
Wait a second, please. Contagious, what is it?
Contagious is of a disease when it spreads from one person or organism to another by direct or even indirect contact.
Like a contagious infection.
Yes.
Thanks.
So, back to our news. But Omicron is still highly contagious and can infect people even if they are fully vaccinated. The record number of people catching it has left health systems under strong tension. On Monday, the UK reported a further 142,224 confirmed cases of the virus and 77 deaths. Several hospitals have declared critical incidents due to staff absences and rising pressures caused by COVID. In Eastern Europe, Poland reported that 100,000 people had died from the virus in the country since the start of the pandemic. Poland now has the 6th highest mortality rate in the world from COVID-19, and almost 40% of its population remains unvaccinated. On Monday, the pharmaceutical firm Pfizer said it would be able to launch...
Excuse me, launch? Isn't it something connected with rockets?
Not necessarily, but it means the same thing, to start or to set in motion, just really anything. So in this case, it would be the vaccine, but you could say, for example, she was launching a campaign against ugly architecture.
Thank you.
So back to our news. On Monday, the pharmaceutical firm Pfizer said it would be able to launch a version of its vaccine that offers a special protection against Omicron, to be rolled out in March. Health experts say it is not yet clear whether this is needed. Quebec to impose a health tax on unvaccinated Canadians.
Interesting idea. Do you know the carrot and stick motivation? It is a motivational approach that involves offering a carrot, a reward for good behavior, and a stick, a negative consequence for poor behavior. In some countries, government offers carrots, apartments and car for vaccinated. Quebec offers a stick to punish the unvaccinated. I wonder how they are going to do it.
Quebec, which has seen the highest number of COVID-related deaths in Canada, is currently struggling with a surge in cases. On Tuesday, the Premier announced that it would be the first in the nation to financially penalize the unvaccinated. Only about 15% of Quebec residents are not vaccinated, but they make up about half of all hospital cases. According to federal data, just over 84% of Quebec residents had received at least one vaccine dose by the 1st of January. Premier Francis Legault said during a news conference that people who have not received their first dose of vaccine will have to pay a contribution. The fee has not yet been decided, but will be significant, he said. Last week, the province announced that it would require proof of vaccination to shop in government cannabis and liquor stores.
Interesting idea.
Very interesting. A curfew.
Stop, please. Curfew? It's a new word for me. What is it?
A curfew is a regulation requiring people to remain indoors between specific hours, typically at night.
Thanks a lot.
Back to our news. A curfew is also in place. Back to our news. A curfew is also in place, the second one of the pandemic, running from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. each day. Hospitals in Montreal, the province's largest city, are nearing 100% capacity and have already started limiting non-COVID related care. While rare, Quebec is not the only region.
Wait a second, please. What does it mean, the only?
When we say that Quebec isn't the only region, it just means that being a single or very few in number. So if we say the only, that's being single. While rare, Quebec is not the only region in the world seeking to impose a financial penalty on those unwilling to get jabbed. Starting later this month, Greeks over age 60 are being required to pay a €100 fine for each month that they remain unvaccinated. Singapore has required COVID patients to pay for their own medical bills if they are not vaccinated.
I believe that the implementation of fines is an unnecessary measure. Unvaccinated people in most countries of the world are not allowed in shops, theaters, museums, and other public places. As for me, this is already a significant limitation.
Actually, not in every country, because as we saw in Canada, it's only in liquor stores and cannabis shops that they have to show proof of vaccination. For instance, in France and in Germany and in other European countries, you have to have your proof of vaccination at all times with you, except for school, I believe. Any shops except for the grocery store, there has to be proof of vaccination. And although it seems like harsh rules, and for you said it seems like an unnecessary measure, I think that this is the best way of guaranteeing the safety of the public.
So you more for the sticks than for carrots?
Yes. Our next news comes from Afghanistan. Kabul's markets full of food, but no one has money. The start of a harsh winter is accelerating Afghanistan's humanitarian crisis. Since the Taliban's seizure of power...
Excuse me, seizure is?
A seizure is the action of capturing someone or something using force. Since the Taliban's seizure of power and international sanctions, the economy has gone into freefall. The collapse of the previous Afghan government and the withdrawal of Western support have led to soaring unemployment.
And soaring? It's something with flying?
It can be used for flying, but it just really means increasing rapidly above the usual level.
So led to soaring unemployment, it means that the level of unemployment it's increased rapidly above the usual level. Thank you.
Few can afford to feed their families or heat their homes. 1 million children are at risk from severe malnourishment. The United Nations has now issued an urgent call for aid for the country.
This is not the first and, unfortunately, not the last case when some people or organizations know how to seize power but do not know how to provide a decent life for the citizens of the country.
Now on to our next news. 3 ethical issues around pig heart transplants.
Oh yeah, I heard that a US man has become the world's first person to get a heart transplant from a genetically modified pig. Are there any problems now?
Let's find out. 57-year-old David Bennett, who doctors say was too ill to qualify for a human heart, is doing well 3 days after the experimental 7-hour treatment.
Treatment is surgery?
Treatment is medical care given to a patient for an illness or, like you said, an injury. The surgery is being hailed by many as a medical breakthrough.
Breaks through the window?
A breakthrough is a sudden, dramatic, or important discovery or development.
It's absolutely different, so...
It is sudden, like breaking through a window. The surgery is being hailed by many as a medical breakthrough that could shorten transplant waiting times and change the lives of patients around the world. But some are questioning if the procedure can be ethically justified. First up, the medical implications. This is an experimental surgery and brings with it huge risks for the patient. Even well-matched human donor organs can be rejected after they are transplanted, and with animal organs the danger is likely to be higher. Next up, animal rights. Mr. Bennett's treatment has also re-sparked a debate over the use of pigs for human transplants, which many animal rights groups oppose. And lastly, religion. Another embarrassment may arise around those whose faith may mean that it will be difficult for them to obtain an animal organ. Pigs are chosen as the relevant organs are a similar size to humans, and because pigs are relatively easy to breed and raise in captivity. But how does this choice affect Jewish or Muslim patients whose religions have strict rules on the animal?
It seems to me that in any religion you can ask for forgiveness from God, whatever his name is. If the transplantation of a pig's heart is a sin, then it is better to commit it and devote the life received as a gift to this very God, or simply to good and noble activities.
I can't exactly give a comment because, on one hand, I think that health and medical procedures should be for all, because there have been times in the past that people have died because of their religion. They didn't want to do a medical procedure. But I wouldn't want anyone to die just because the religion says that it's a sin. But on the other hand, perhaps this procedure shouldn't even exist.
What do you mean, even exist?
Well, it's a bit strange, and when you see all the different risks and all the ethical questions. Perhaps it's a procedure that should have remained an experiment or just a hypothesis and never should have actually happened.
I want to discuss it with you, but
we don't have much time.
And as usual, the last news is
a bit lighter.
A bit lighter, thank you for this word.
Mm-hmm. And it is about children and electronics. Ofcom.
Ofcom stands for the Office of Communication, the UK government's agency for laws on TV, radio, phones, internet, etc.
Ofcom has a report that children are using electronic devices more and more often. 19% of children who are 3 to 4 years old have a tablet and use it over an hour a day. Children who are 12 to 15 spend over 20 hours a week online, and 70% of them use their phones in bed. A psychologist said that parents need to have rules as to when and where their children use the devices. A mother said that it causes a lot of arguments to get off of the electronics, and the arguing usually turns into the kids continuing to use them for a long time. There is no ideal limit to using electronics, but advice is to keep it low.
And we again returned to the carrot and stick method. Only in this case, unlike COVID, the stick is the only method. The only method. One method. The only one question is about its size. I mean the size of the stick. Something in this approach seems wrong to me. I think that instead of prohibition or limits, it is necessary to think about how it can be replaced. It can be sports and other activities, family events. The main thing is that the parents themselves do not set a bad example for their children.
I agree with you as a child, because oftentimes if a parent is criticizing how much their child spends on electronics, they're not considering how much time they spend on electronics as well. When it's for work, when it's just for social life, it's the same thing for children. A lot of students have to use electronics for their schoolwork. So this is it for today.
Yes, this episode has come to an end.
We will be happy if you press the button like under this episode.
And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast.
Also, you can ask questions and write comments under each episode.
Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.